Jimmy Coffin for Coffin Comics. This is it. Wow, this has been so amazing. Crucial Con this weekend. We're giving out all the, spilling all the tea for 2023, and this next panel is not going to disappoint. We've got the one and only, direct from his pirate ship, the one and only art director for Coffin Collectibles, Joe Allard. Let's bring him in. So we brought you on today to talk about Coffin Collectibles and what's coming up in 2023. We've got a really big announcement, and then we also at the end we got a little tease of something else that's coming up. But we've got done so much work on here. I got to see a little bit of preview on here. I can't wait to get the details on what I'm looking at. But here, I'll let you set it up and let everyone know what we're about to announce here.
Some fun stuff. I think first we're going to take a look at our Majestic statue, which is already out, and some of you can still grab from the store a couple of the versions. And then we have our second statue in the Coffin Collectibles line of products. That's a really fun one. It's different from the previous. I'm super excited to show everybody what it looks like. And then, like Jimmy said at the end, we're going to tease something coming after the statue that's still a work in progress. And I'm super excited about showing everybody what Coffin is rocking right now.
I forgot about the here, just want to start with the Majestic statues. We got two of these at Coffin Collectible Shop available right now. These were amazing. Folks are just actually, because we're looking at the pictures that were the prototypes, and I remember we didn't know what we were doing at first. We didn't know we should have like photoshopped these, because a lot of collectibles were calling out hey, that's not perfect, this is not perfect. But when they got it, they realized, oh, Coffin don't play. You managed this all the way through from beginning to end, and these came out unbelievable.
Yeah, super pleased with how they came out. They're, like you said, they're beautiful. Each version has its own thing and is just super desirable. A lot of times when companies do color variants, it's just it doesn't really work out that well, but the colors that Brian chose and the variants that we went with, I think are just different enough that, I know a lot of collectors picked up all 3 or 4 of them, which is pretty astounding. And we kind of had one for everybody's taste. Everybody kind of seems to have their favorite. Mine personally, although I love classic Lady Death, I'm super taken with the Scarlet version. I think if I had to pick one of those, it's probably my favorite.
Yeah, at first I thought the Heaven Sent, but I think it's so hard.
It is. It's really hard to do.
Yeah, in person, because the photos, because like what you think is going to look great in photos, when he actually arrives, it's just like. But you know what? I'm going to say the one that sold out like super limited. It's the faux bronze.
Oh, nice.
And I was there when they did the video for that.
Right.
It's just like in the right light, it just almost looks like chocolatey kind of velvety. Oh, it's amazing. And you think just like 2 colors or 1 color it's
right. It's actually a bit of a trick, because although traditional bronze usually are just bronze, maybe with some kind of patina on there, we kind of did a little trickery with it because we wanted certain areas to stand out. So there are actually a couple colors floating around in that bronze. If you look at it carefully, that's why you can see the distinction between like her skin and her outfit, because we did slightly different bronze colors on there just to kind of make certain areas pop. And I think the result was pretty astounding. It came out pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'm just trying to load what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about. Sorry, folks, if you missed it, you missed it. But yeah, it is. Yeah, it's not just, there is the coloration in there, which is just so stunning.
Yeah, exactly. We there are faux bronzes and real bronzes out there that are all one color, but Brian and I both really liked the look of the different color bronzes, because there isn't just one color bronze. You can get different tones and hues in there. So that's what we kind of did just to make her outfit pop from the rest of her. And I think it was pretty successful. She came out pretty bitchin'.
Yes. And I got to say, your art directing on that is just stunning. I can't wait to see this next project here that's coming up.
Yeah, we got a fun one coming up, actually.
So here we go. Drum roll, please. I'm going to show off the image that this new statue is going to be based off of. It is the one and only J. Scott Campbell.
Yeah. One of my favorite comic book artists, definitely. So when Brian let me know that we were going to be translating his Lady Death cover into the next Coffin Collectible statue, I was pretty beyond stoked. I mean, I think a lot of people love Jay Scott as much as I do. And it's just so much fun because he's got such a different style. You know, it's very animated, a little, you know, very stylized. And I love his character designs. I love his illustration style. So being able to art direct this and help bring it to life in 3D was just a true blessing. It was super awesome, and it still is because we're still working on it actually. So what you're seeing here, the first one you saw was Jay Scott's original pencil sketch for the cover, and then the next one there is the full color actual cover of one of the issues, just minus all the title and text and all that stuff, so you can see the full-on design. So the challenge here was Brian presented me with this and said, we want to turn this into a statue. So now I've got to look at this basically and decide what elements we're keeping, what we're not keeping, what we can do in resin and statue form. So this is what I came up with. Basically, I had to get away from the background. The main elements that we wanted were obviously the gargoyle pillar that she's standing on, and then the stained glass church window that's behind her, because those were just the super iconic things that jumped out of the cover. Obviously, we went through some versions where we tried it without the stained glass and vice versa, and it just Brian and I agreed that having the stained glass back there was just so much more impactful with the piece, especially since we're planning to do the stained glass in like a translucent resin, so it really does look like a stained glass back there. And your sword energy will be translucent as well. So this was me basically just photoshopping Jay Scott's cover, and I created a little base down there from his stairs that he already drew. I rotated a few things, moved a few things, fudged with her cape a little bit, finished it off there basically, just to show Brian, of course, what I wanted to do, and then to give the sculptor, obviously, the proper direction on what he's going to be sculpting. So that was the final design that was approved by Brian. And then that's what we gave to our sculptor on this piece to start working on. And for this piece, for this piece, we have Jack Matthews, and he's a really well-known sculptor in the industry, a super guy, super talented dude. And he's actually done quite a few Jay Scott pieces for various clients in the past. So we knew that he was the guy to go to with these, because he was used to and has nailed J. Scott Campbell's style in the past. So he was definitely somebody we sought after to get to do this piece. And fortunately for us and all the collectors out there, he was on board. So those are some of the first images you see there. Go back to the first one there, Jimmy. Yeah. So these are some of the first views. So basically this was basically my first comments on the piece. On the left there, you see some of the first just very roughed out images that Jack sent us. And right there, I decided that rather than having her face directly forward, I wanted her facing kind of diagonal off to the side. When you're doing a statue, you don't want everything like fully directly forward. You want to create a lot of dimension, just like you do in a 2D comic book cover. So we felt it was more visually interesting if she was looking off to the side rather than directly at the viewer. So that's basically just my Photoshop to the right. I took another image, another angle that Jack sent, and I Photoshopped it onto the piece to show that I wanted her looking or facing to the statue's right, basically, rather than straight ahead. So that was kind of my first round of comments right there to Jack.
And I see what you're saying about with not having the stained glass window behind on that.
Right.
It's just like, yeah, it has to be
not as impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really helps with the fact I think we're calling this Lady Death Gothic, and obviously adding that church, the church stained glass window back there really helps sell it. And I think it's just going to be a really cool visual effect to have the translucent glass, back there behind her with all the different colors. You can have light shine through the back, a lot of stuff you can do to play with it and make it look really bitchin'. Yeah.
And then what's this next one here we're looking at?
So this was a top view. Basically, we went back and forth with a few different base shapes to find out what worked. And this was what we kind of settled on. And this is really just me. I think this was part of the same first round of comments, because you see that pink arrow down there. I'm saying like I had her turned a little bit. And then mostly I just wanted him to know that I want the cape blowing off to her left a little bit more like Jay Scott had in the cover. So that's just really quick scribble saying, let's blow the cape off to the left, basically. And that's just informing Jack of where to go at this rough stage. He'll send roughs, as you can see that cape is just super roughed in there, just to basically to get these notes. Do you like the flow? Do you like the direction? That sort of thing. So these are really early comments just showing the direction and flow and action we want these pieces to have on Lady Death.
It's so cool to see the behind the scenes of this.
Yeah. With a static statue like this, you really want to utilize everything you've got to kind of show motion and life in this thing, So you take her hair and the cape, obviously that stuff's going to blow in the wind. It's going to move when she moves. So you really want to take advantage of that opportunity of showing some motion and some life in this piece. So that's why we wanted to have it blow off to her left, basically, to show that, some spooky wind is blowing through her hair and blowing the cape, and she's got some motion. So we were just really looking to take advantage of that opportunity with the flowy pieces that she's got going on there.
You obviously know what you're doing, because they're always amazing.
I've been doing it a little while. Yeah, so this is probably second round of comments. You can see we've got the stained glass, at least the frame roughed in back there. And then if you look at it compared to the bottom piece, mostly what we're doing, I think what I'm saying in this piece is I'm just more cape comments. Like if you can see this one, the cape looks a little disjointed there. Again, it's just Jack roughing it in. He's just looking for notes. Like, is this going the right direction before I spend a lot of time putting detail in the cape and stuff? So at this point, it was mostly cape comments, I think, going on here. And, and as you can see, I actually removed one of the levels of the base. On the lower images, you can see there's 3 steps. But what it did was it looks cool, actually, height-wise. I like the extra height. But what it did was, from a top view, it made it just that much bigger, to have another round of steps there. And I felt it was getting too wide of a piece. So with Brian's blessing, we decided to omit just that lower stair right there, basically. So that's what's going on there in those images. And then, so you can see with the 3 stairs, see how wide it's getting down there on the bottom image?
Gotcha.
I just didn't like that. It just was too large of a footprint. So we got rid of the lower stairs, and then you can see that originally Jack had the stained glass kind of in from the end, and then we had the kind of octagon continuing. But again, that was almost like wasted space. It was almost as if it was making the piece bigger and clunkier, and it wasn't providing anything to the statue. So I decided to cut it off in the back right there. Rather than completing the octagon, we just kind of chopped that back portion off behind the stained glass, just to kind of reduce the footprint and make, everything in the statue as interesting and kind of necessary as possible. And then there's some more squiggles just showing like, I want more folds in the cape, get it really folded in there, get some real cool drapery in there. And then it looks like I nudged the pillar, the Gothic pillar, to her right a little bit, just to give her a little more room to breathe there in the statue. That's what that green arrow is right there. So that's what's going on there. We're still really early in the process, just dialing in the fundamentals and the basic shapes of the statue at this point.
That's so fascinating. Ooh, this one looks cool.
Yep. She's getting more detailed here. We're coming along in the process, definitely. At this point, my comments were mostly to try and capture more of J. Scott Campbell's style in the piece. Just the animated style he's got to the arms. They're very shapely, very cartoony and stylized. So although Jack was still early in this and was still fleshing things out, it's kind of me just making sure this is the direction Jack's going. I want that shape in the arms. I don't want it realistic in a sense, I want it to try and match J. Scott's style as much as possible, because that's what's fun about this piece, where our last Majestic piece, which was also based on a cover, You know, it was a very realistic style cover, so we went with a very realistic sculpt. In this case, J. Scott has his amazing style. It's what makes him, you know, J. Scott Campbell. And so we wanted to make sure we captured that in this piece. So this is really just, let's make sure we're capturing his anatomy style in Our Lady Death here. And then just kind of rounding out the sword energy right there to kind of finish off neatly the way it did in his cover artwork.
Very cool. And I love that little gargoyle guy down there.
Yeah, he's killer, right? He's so much fun. And Jack nailed him right off the bat. You know, all I did was make tiny little adjustments, so he was more attached to the pillar rather than, you know, looked like he was more carved from the pillar rather than attached to it. So that's kind of all I did there. And then I made some, you can see like some green I drew on the fingers there. J. Scott, you know, is very particular with his hands and fingers. So I wanted to make sure, if you look at the Lady Death cover artwork, you'll see she's got a kind of a distinctive bend to her fingers. So I just wanted to make sure we captured that, you know, trying to capture as much of the detail from J. Scott's artwork that we can in this piece.
Devil's in the details for sure.
Exactly, 100%.
This looks cool. Like, look at that. Oh,
yeah. This is interesting. So it's still a work in progress. We're still making a whole lot of tweaks and changes. But what this is Jack showing us the parts that we're going to break it down in. So obviously when you get it as a collector, it's generally in only one or two pieces. A lot of times you need to maybe, how this one's probably going to be packaged is, I imagine, the base and the stained glass window will probably be one piece. And then you'll probably insert the pillar and then insert Lady Death on top of that. You know, so if you're somebody that's purchased our Majestic piece, you'll know that Lady Death came packaged separate from the base, and you had to take her out, and she has a little peg in her foot, and you set her into the base. This will be similar, but even more than what the collectors get at home. In order to print this 3D sculpture and to manufacture it, it needs to be broken down into a lot of pieces. You have to avoid undercuts so you can pull it out of the mold. It needs to be broken up so parts can be more easily painted at the factory level. So each color you're seeing on here is a separate piece. So you can see just her hair is two different pieces, and that's separate from her head. So that's all going to be broken apart. And right now it's actually at the printer. Jason Wires is printing this for us again. He printed the previous one as well. So each one of these will be printed separately and then assembled via Jason. And then that's going to go to the painter who's going to paint it. So as you can see, the arm is separate from her torso. The forearm is separate from the sleeve on her left arm. The sword and sword energy are separate. The stained glass is separate from the frame. That's so we can cast the glass portion in that translucent resin, while the rest of it is cast in a regular solid opaque resin. So that's basically what this is. This is Jack checking with me to see if I agree with how he's breaking this down for printing and for painting. Jack's really good at engineering, so I don't think I had any changes here with what he was doing.
Yeah, that's cool to think, to see that. How you guys are thinking about how it needs to be broken up. And I love the color treatment on that too. That'd be cool. It's like a psychedelic.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love it. I love all the colors. They look cool, and it just really helps everybody visually understand how many pieces this is going to be. You know, even the little skulls on her belt are going to be separate. And that's so they can make sure they get detail in there, and so they're easier to paint. You know, if you had to paint those on the belt at the factory level even, you know, you might get some overspray or some paint over while they're painting something that tiny. But if they're separate, it's going to be a much cleaner, paint process when you're able to paint it separately and then assemble it on the belt. And it's just gonna look a lot cleaner that way.
Yeah, setting them up for a win on that.
100%, exactly.
And here's nice.
Yeah, so this is a close-up on the face. We went through a lot of back and forth on the face just because Brian and myself are super particular on Lady Death's face, on everything we do. It's obviously she's always got to be beautiful. She's always got to, you know, capture that Lady Death personality and characteristic. And then with this one, we had the added challenge of capturing it in J. Scott's style. So fortunately, as I mentioned, Jack is a master sculptor, and he's sculpted J. Scott's designs several times in the past. So he really was able to nail it. And we just went back and forth, a lot of minutia, a lot of little details. As you can see my notes right there. It's even hard, like even for me who made the adjustments, like looking at these, it's hard to see what I did. You know what I mean? Like it's so minor. I think I believe I blew up her lips a little bit, and I tweaked the eyelashes a little bit on those. You can see I opened them up a little bit. Oh no, I'm sorry. Gosh, it was so long ago. Yeah, I think I gave her more of like a squint, so she had was just a little bit less vacant looking. She's hard to get an expression with, Lady Death, because she has no pupils, which help a lot. So it's a real challenge, especially with J. Scott's kind of animated style, to create, an intense look for her or a purposeful look for her. You don't want her to have like a vacant stare. So me, Brian, and Jack went back and forth quite a bit, just trying to get her portrait, to be perfect and to be as on model for J. Scott as possible. And then to also make sure she has an expression or, some emotion about her. And then the hair, what's that?
Oh yeah. Speaking of J. Scott,
Yeah.
At what point did you saying he's involved in this?
He was. Yep.
And he's approving at some levels. Has he approved this yet, or has it gotten to?
No. The way we went about it was Brian and I and Jack worked to get it as close as we felt we could before sending it to J. Scott. He's a busy fellow, obviously. So we wanted to get through all the minutia and all the details and really fine tune it as much as we could before even showing it to J. Scott, so that hopefully it made his job easier, Jack's job easier, and our job easier, because we already solved a lot of the issues that may have arisen, or comments that J. Scott may have made, trying to, think through, well, what's he going to comment on? And just like I said, just trying to get it to capture J. Scott's style as much as possible. So the three of us really worked hard to get it to a great point before even sharing with J. Scott Campbell. So that's what you're seeing here, is me and Jack and Brian going back and forth, and just really trying to fine tune it as much as possible before showing J. Scott Campbell.
That makes perfect sense. And then here's the.
Yep. Here's Jack getting even closer and closer to J. Scott's style. It's really getting closer to kind of what we envisioned here. From that previous sculpt images, we really originally Jack had kind of more a realistic hairstyle. That's why it says hair adjusted on the right there. But what we wanted to do was, since J. Scott has a very cartoony animated style, we wanted to simplify the hair. Actually, usually we're adding more detail to everything. That's like hyper detail these days. All the collectibles, like everything's detailed out. But in this case, we actually wanted to dial Jack back a little bit and like remove some of the scribe lines and some of the strands of hair in there to get more of an animated, cartoony feel, and to make it feel more like J. Scott's hair that he drew on the cover there. So that's what's going on there. And then in the new image that you showed, everything's getting dialed in a little more. He adjusted the lips. We puffed up the lips a little bit so they were a little fuller. We kind of made the eyes a little squintier, so she had a little bit of an expression going on. And then we've simplified the hair at this point and really dialed in the flow, and the details are getting more to what we imagined for this piece.
Okay, and then up next we've got even more.
Here we go. These are J. Scott's comments. So this is the page at which he commented on. So we got it to, like I said, we got it to a point that Brian and I felt was, quality enough and good enough for J. Scott to review, and he's not going to have to, noodle too many things. What he really did here was, which is what one of the things he's great at in his art and in his art direction of these pieces, is the body language. Obviously, he knows himself, so he knows what needs to be pushed a little bit to make it feel a little bit more like something he would have drawn. So what we came away with here was really her body language. We tweaked, as you can see, we almost tweaked everything just a little bit. We brought her right leg back farther. We put her left arm forward more. We arched her back a little bit more, which brought her head up a little bit more. And so you can see there just all his little tweaks and comments there. He's very great to work with because he does these very detailed overlays and notes that really help direct the sculptor to exactly what he's thinking, and really helps us set it up for a win with Jack, because he's very particular and specific about what he sees needing adjustment. So that's what we've got there. So this really helped us dial in her body language, and much to our surprise, his comments, aside from these little tweaks in the body language, were fairly minor. He didn't have a ton of notes on the face, didn't have a ton of notes on the style or the details. He really felt that Jack had captured, a lot of his style with the anatomy and the look of everything. So we were actually really pleased when we got J. Scott's notes back. Because, you're always a little afraid when you show the artist. You're like, oh, crap, he's going to hate it. He's going to tear it apart. Or what's he going to say? But in this case, J. Scott was complimentary the whole time. He said it looked great, and he gave us some great notes, and he helped make it even greater and helped make it even more of a J. Scott Campbell piece by the time he took to do those overlays and do the drawings and notes. So, extremely helpful, obviously, in dialing this piece in. And you don't always get to work with the artist that you're basing the piece on. So this was, a privilege to be able to work with J. Scott and really get it dialed in so the collectors, get a real authentic piece. Not only is Brian, the creator of Lady Death, overseeing it, but J. Scott, the artist for the cover who inspired the piece, is also getting a hand in, having his hand in it and getting a word in on what the final piece could and should be. And so that's a big bonus for myself and for the collectors to have, the authorities really saying what's what on this piece.
Yeah, it was a good call that you pulled in Jack to be the sculptor on there, because obviously that saved a lot of time and energy on J. Scott's.
100%. As soon as Brian showed me the piece and told me what we were doing, a number of sculptors went through my head. I was like, oh, I know this guy did J. Scott. I know this guy did J. Scott. So, and Jack is one of the best. And so fortunately he was able to work with us on this piece, and we're all super stoked to be working with him on this. This, I think, is getting towards the end. This is, I think this is one of the final renders of one of the final updates from Jack. This is post the J. Scott Campbell comments, basically. He's made all those adjustments to her pose. He arched her back. He moved her left leg back, moved her right arm forward. I think he even tweaked the left arm a little bit. So as you can see, it's really coming together here, and it's really looking super sweet. I couldn't be more happy with the way this piece came together. So this is getting near the end of the sculpture development, basically. Yeah, and I think this is probably, I'm not sure what the title, can you see what the file is called?
Ortho Turnaround.
Okay, yeah, so this is one of the last turns. I think we have one more set of updates that are going to be called final updates. But this is one of the last turnaround images that Jack sent to us that I believe we sent off to J. Scott just to get his final buy-off, like showing him that we made those tweaks that he requested.
Also, when you talked about the stand, I could see what you're saying with the dead space if you kept it going in the back. It's just perfect call on that with the behind.
Thank you. Yeah, it would have just been too big. I wanted to include as much from the cover art as possible, but you really want this to be, you want everything to kind of have a purpose in this story. There can be negative space. You can really use negative space to your advantage, but we didn't want anything extraneous or anything unnecessary. And just having that extra piece in the back meant that somebody couldn't display it back against their wall, and have to display forward, which just takes up more room. And from my personal experience as a collector myself, you run out of space fast, man. It's like it's trying to squeeze this stuff onto a shelf full of all the other Lady Death stuff that our collectors have is just, sometimes a challenge. Yeah. So if we could reduce that base footprint and still tell the full story, that's really what you want to do on these pieces. So
the JSC turn.
Okay, yeah. So I think this was our final pass, sending it to J. Scott just to get his final thumbs up and make sure that he was pleased with all the changes that we made based on his comments, and that it looked good to him before we polish it off and finish it up. So yeah, all the changes have been made there. Yeah. And this is kind of one of the final beauty shots. Just showing, I think this is from Jack showing Brian and myself some of the final little tweaks. Because once J. Scott gives his thumbs up and I give my thumbs up and Brian gives his thumbs up, Jack will go in and just polish everything off. When we make changes like moving the leg back, sometimes keys change, sometimes the parts that he had it separated into change. So he usually just has to go back in and make some maybe engineering improvements. And then just anything that got, tweaked a little bit, maybe needs to be smoothed over. Make sure and there's no, visual lumps in the sculpture. Make sure the cape is flowing nice, and just getting everything dialed in for the printer before we send it off, because you want to make sure you hit all the pieces and really scrutinize it at this point, because once it gets put in resin, like, that's what you got. At this point we can still make changes. So it's really us just scrutinizing all the finer details and making sure everybody's pleased with it, and that it's ready to go for the printer and the painter.
So this is called Final Update 1. I just want to go back to the very first one to see how it changed from that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah. If you could see those side by side, you'd see such a huge, improvement, obviously.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Exactly. Wow. So there's a lot of back and forth. This took us several months to get it dialed in. But it was all worth it. It took a while just because everybody's busy. Jay Scott's busy. Jack is busy. Brian's busy. We're all busy. So it took a while to get it going. I think maybe 3-4 months, maybe, with back and forths with all the, comments and whatnot. But Jack just hit it home with this, man. It's just, I couldn't be more happy with it. It came out, it came out better than I had hoped. And I can't wait to see it painted. So right now, status on this lovely lady is everything's been finalized. Jack has sent over the final files. He basically, so what he does at this point, once it's got all approvals from everybody, he will cut it up into the image that you showed with the color parts. He will basically go in and separate everything. Now that the sculpture's been approved, he will separate the hair and separate the arms, and he'll add little keys so that once it's printed, it can easily be put onto the piece. Once it all comes out separately, it's kind of like a puzzle. You put the hair on the head, you put the arm on the torso, and all that jazz. So Jack cuts it all up into those little pieces. So he sends me the files. It's not one file with, this is the Lady Death statue. It's like, here's Lady Death's left side of her hair. Here's the right side of her hair. Here's the head. Here's the right hand. Here's the left hand. Here's the sword. Here's the sword energy, all that stuff. So it's each piece is a separate file, basically. So all those files get sent over to Jason Wires at Jason Wires Productions. And he is right now going through all the files, and it's getting put on the printer tonight is what I believe. So she's going to actually start being printed tomorrow. Yeah, super exciting. This is exciting because this is when, all this stuff you're reviewing and commenting on, it's all digital, right? So, it's just like you said with those photos of the Majestic piece. We were looking at the prototype, and it's just photographs. The real excitement comes when you see it in person, when you actually get to see a physical print standing on a desk. You get to see the size, you get to see it from all angles, not on a computer screen and not a digital file. So that's what's happening now. So about a week from now, we will get the first images from Jason of an actual physical 3D statue, all put together and ready for the painter, basically. So that's where she's at now. She's getting 3D printed starting tonight or starting tomorrow. And then in about a week, we'll have our first images of the printed files all assembled. And then if all's good, we send her off to the painter and we start to see her come to life in full color.
Wow, that's so exciting. Thank you for taking us through all of that. And I guess the next question everyone wants to know, when is this going to be available? But right now, all we know for sure is 2023. And more details will come. Brian's going to form that into a reality, and then we'll let everyone know what happens next.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a lot of fun stuff planned with this, similar to the Majestic. We're going to do a couple color variants, and Brian's got some great ideas on what those variants are, and we've been going back and forth a bit. I think we've got a couple fun ones that we're going to throw in that were different from last time. So we're still finalizing all that right now. The painter is going to paint our main version, the classic version, the one that matches J. Scott's cover art, the color cover. And then from there, we'll narrow down all of the cool color schemes and variants that Brian and I have been tossing back and forth. So that's fun. Yeah, that's fun coming up with the different color versions.
Okay, so that covers the Lady Death Gothic.
Yes.
We have a little tease on something else that you were working on. Also something coming up 2023. No hard details yet, but why don't you set this one up?
Yeah, this was a fun one, especially for me, because with the other two, with Majestic and with Gothic, I'm art directing somebody else's designs. You know, we had two brilliant covers. This one, J. Scott Campbell. The previous one was based on another cover also. I can't recall the artist's name at the moment. So those were awesome to art direct those. This one came around and Brian told me, we had a discussion months ago about all the things he wanted to do with Coffin Collectibles. And we've actually got quite a few things going through processes right now. The one that's farthest along, Brian came up with the idea he wanted to do 9-inch vinyl statues, basically.
Yes.
So they'll be, rather than be in resin, they're going to be in plastic. And they're going to be similar to like the Diamond Select gallery pieces. So they'll be smaller. They'll be easier to collect. They won't be as fragile as the resin pieces. And they'll be a lot more dynamic and action oriented. So Brian wanted to do that scale. It's basically 9-inch. I think is technically 8th scale is the way it works out. Our two statues, Majestic and Gothic, are 6th scale. Roughly, if she stood up upright, she would be about 12 inches. So these 8-inch or 8th scale vinyls, if she stood up, she'd be about 9 inches. So they're smaller, and we actually have 3 already designed and planned. And the fun thing with these are they're all in dynamic action poses. And the fun thing we came up with is they all work together, basically. We wanted to have battle scenes that the collectors could kind of create for themselves on their own, show a little bit of creativity. So we're doing various characters, and they're all in action poses, and you can set them up in various ways to where Lady Death is battling various people, and you can kind of display them. If you get all 3, I assume we're going to do more in the future, but you can display them however you want, you know, and it's just fun. Yeah, so this is the first one. Of course, we had to start with our gal, Lady Death here. So I think like I stumbled off my train of thought here. The fun part with these was Brian wanted me to design them myself. So it wasn't we weren't just basing them on covers. Brian wanted something completely original, not basing it on covers. And I was fortunate enough that Brian asked me to design these myself, which is fun. One of the things I do, for people that don't know, as much as I art direct, I also design. Probably more than I art direct, I design. I've been designing collectibles for longer than I would care to admit. I've been in the industry more 25 plus years, something like that. So yeah, I have a few designs under my belt. And I have designed a Lady Death statue in the past. The one that we did, or that Brian did with Sideshow years and years ago, the one of her holding her scythe, standing on like the mound of skulls. I think it was the very first Sideshow Lady Death. I designed that probably 10 years ago when I was working with Sideshow. So that was a pleasure to do. And then flash forward to now, Brian's like, I want to do these 9-inch vinyls. I want them very dynamic. I'd like you to come up with some designs. So what I did, basically like I do with most of my clients with Brian, I gave him a bunch of thumbnail sketches. Like I think I gave him 4 or 5 roughs of Lady Death. Like here she is in this pose, this base. And so we narrowed it down to this, basically. And cool. So she's obviously in full battle. She's blasting her energy from her hand. She's got some of her energy swirling around her feet. The fun part with this is, the energy is going to be translucent plastic, and it's just going to be super dynamic. And so we wanted this to be a fun piece on its own. Obviously, you've got a super dynamic, action-oriented Lady Death, which is different from our other Lady Deaths that we've done. Majestic, she's just very sultry and kind of walking. And Jay Scott, she's, about to do something action-oriented, but she's standing there kind of perched, kind of like a Batman pose, surveying what she's about to, destroy or whatever. In this one, though, we got to explore her full-on action pose, Lady Death, in the midst of some vicious battle with some of her mortal enemies, basically. So that was a lot of fun to try and capture her super action oriented, but we still obviously wanted her very, very sexy and very Lady Death. So that was the fun challenge here. And so this was the final Lady Death design. And fortunately for us, we got Jack Matthews to sculpt this as well. And so I don't know if you want to go in. We have some in progress images of her sculpt, but we also have 2 other designs. So
so let's take the other ones too before we look at that. The La Muerta one.
So here's La Muerta. So same with Lady Death. I showed Brian about 4 or 5 just rough thumbnail sketches, and we narrowed it down to this. We knew we were going to be doing these first 3 statues, so obviously we wanted them to all work together, and we wanted them to all be very different. So here's Lady Death. She could easily be fighting La Muerta right here. You can set them up and pose them in a way so it looks like they're battling. We had some discussion early on of actually having the bases connect to where you had like a collect and connect type thing. But what that does, that kind of limits you in a way. It makes your base have to be a little larger than like we were talking about for the Gothic, where you kind of want it to be the smallest footprint possible, not take up too much unnecessary space. So while we were developing these, Brian and I decided to just make them what is called kind of a proximity display. They're still meant to be displayed together, and the bases will all be similar and look like they could connect in a way, but they don't actually attach like a puzzle piece. Which we like better, because then you can display them right next to each other. You can display them wherever you want, however you want. If you had a puzzle piece, you're basically telling the collector how they have to display it. In this instance, you give them more opinion. You give them more option and more creativity. It's like, you want to rotate it this way, display this one here, display that one there. You're giving them more freedom to kind of create their own battle scene, basically. So that's La Muerta. She was our second one. And then Hell Witch is our third one. And again, with her, she had to work with the other 3, so they all could be fighting each other. One could be fighting one another. And with her, obviously, she flies with her wings, and I wanted her to be raised up from the base a little bit. And so she is basically being supported by the flames coming off of the base right there. And also still in the throes of battle, she's got her energy also will be a cool translucent lime green plastic, and she could be easily fighting either Lady Death or La Muerta. And what we tried to do with these, and Brian was very specific with these, he wanted each of the bases to kind of, we needed them to be similar because we wanted them to display well together, but we also wanted them to be customized to where each one felt like it was from the world of that character. So Lady Death, she's on some, awful battlefield with skulls and bones that were from previous, vanquished enemies or whatever. She's got her energy swirling up from the base, the blue energy. And then we come to La Muerta. And if you notice, we've also got skulls and bones, but they're not just the regular skulls, they're sugar skulls. They're painted with the, the Day of the Dead type detailing, because that's where, La Muerta, that's where her world comes from. And instead of the energy, she's got smoke, you know, steam coming up from the ruins of what could be a destroyed graveyard, you know, another battlefield that just feels like it could fit with the Lady Death statue, but it's also pulled from her world, you know, so she displays alone very well. And then if you jump to the Hell Witch, obviously you got to have flames of hell with Hell Witch, right? So we've got the exactly. So we've got the translucent orange flames rising up from what is also another battlefield with skulls. But if you look at these skulls, they're demon skulls. You know, they've got the horns of demons, which again, we're just pulling from Hell Witch's universe. And that's kind of what you would see on her battlefield. So while they're all bases of like, you know, broken rocks and dirt with skulls on them, each of the skulls are kind of tailored towards that character's world. And all of the energy, you know, each one has a translucent bit of energy or smoke coming from the base, but they're all customized towards what that character, you know, where they come from. So they're all very unique, yet they all will make a nice collection if you pair them all together. So that's what we're going at for these was, you know, action-oriented, customized battle scenes that will all display sweet alone, but even sweeter when you bring all three together and you create a cool little battle scene with our lovely ladies here.
And then, so who is doing this 3D sculpting now? Is that still the same gentleman?
That's Jack. Yeah, exactly. We were having so much success with Jack, and he's such a super talented dude that we asked him if he was interested in doing these 9-inch vinyls, and he was more than stoked to continue working with us on Lady Death. Awesome. So as we speak, Jack is fine-tuning our Lady Death 9-inch vinyl. And so what you see here is one of the latest updates. We actually have more updates coming later this week. But this is where she was at last time. Jack sent some updates, and then Brian and I made some notes on this. But this is where she's at. She's coming along really nicely. This is, I think, round 2. Just like you saw in the J. Scott Campbell sculpts, you know, we got a really rough start at the beginning, and then we kind of dialed in her pose and details. And this is round 2 from Jack. And we're basically waiting on round 3, which should be near a final round from Jack. And yep, and here we go with the turnarounds there, basically. So you can see based, you know, it looks very much like the design I did with, you know, some great embellishment from Jack, and also dialing things in that I drew that, you know, maybe need to be thickened up, like the energy here and there, so it could support her, basically. But yeah, this is just turning out to be a super fun, super dynamic piece that we're really having a lot of fun with. And I just can't wait to see all of the statues, you know, the physical statues lined up together, you know, battling each other, basically. So that was round 2. We made some notes. We're basically working on the flow of the hair, the flow of the cape, some little, you know, minutia details there. And we should have a new update from Jack probably later this week. But
so amazing.
She's already looking bitchin'. She's already looking super great.
Yeah, that's just round 2. So, man, I can't imagine round 3 and 4. And like, man,
exactly. Everyone, you think this is awesome, it can't get better, and then it does get better, and then it does get better, and it just keeps getting sweeter and sweeter. Yeah, right, exactly. So I love the process, man. I love designing, and what's really fun for me is it's rare in my job that I get to art direct my own design. Usually I'm designing for an art director, and then once I do the design, I hand it off to somebody, and I often don't get to see it until it comes out, you know, and it's up for pre-sale. But in this case, I get to, you know, usher it from stage to stage. I get to, you know, deal with the approvals with Brian, and then I get to deal with the sculpt reviews with Jack, and then I get to oversee the printing and painting and manufacturing. And it's just super, super fulfilling to be able to design it and then art direct it all the way through the process to finished product. And that is just super fulfilling. And I love the fact that Brian is trusting me enough with our beloved ladies to oversee that whole process from design to finished product. And it's just, it's been a blast. It's a lot of fun working on these ladies. It's a lot of fun working with Brian and Coffin. And I just super dig it. It's been a blast.
Yeah, you're the right man for the job, obviously.
Thank you, Jimmy.
what we've already done and what's coming up. It's just so exciting. So folks, you heard it here first. 2023 is going to be an amazing time for Coffin Collectibles, with Joe here at the helm directing the artwork to make sure you get the pristine best art available on these statues, because you deserve it.
Absolutely.
Any final words you want to tell everyone that's out there?
Final words are keep an eye out. Keep an eye out on the Coffin channels, because there's even more coming. We're already working on stuff that we couldn't show today that's completely different from what you have seen. It's nothing like the Majestic or the Gothic or our 9-inch vinyls. It's something people probably are not even expecting to come from Brian and Coffin Comics, and it's just been a lot of fun. So I'm actually working on the designs for that right now, and I'm sure Brian has plans on when he's going to review that. And you know, the success that we had with Majestic allowed us to do Gothic and allowed us to do these 9-inch vinyls. And I'm confident that we're going to have as much success with these. So the future for Coffin Collectibles is bright. And I'm super stoked to see what Brian comes up with next, that we're going to work on together, and what we're going to share with you collectors, because it's all about you guys. And it's all about Lady Death. And, you know, we want to make you guys proud. We want you guys to love what we do, because we love what we do. And it's just, it's that awesome. You know, everybody's got a big smile on their face when they're working on this stuff, just because it's so much fun. And it's a great challenge to bring everybody the quality that, you know, Brian demands in his pieces.
What an amazing cliffhanger there at the end, with announcement there with something not even expected in the future. So expect the unexpected for
exactly 100%. Yeah.
Well, thanks again for taking your time. I know you're super busy, that you're you know,
pleasure. Yeah,
sailing the 7 seas. You're taking some time before.
All right, exactly. I know. My parrot's calling. I need to go feed my parrot. I think there's a ship to plunder.
He's like, yeah, he's just gonna go drink rum, everybody. Yeah. But, Joe Allard, thank you so much. We got your number. Thanks again, everyone. Stick around. We got more exciting news here for. What are we doing? We're doing Crucial Con.
Crucial Con! Yeah!
Crucial Con. Stick around. We got so much more. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Stay tuned. Sign up for the newsletter if you haven't, folks. Future is bright for Coffin Collectibles. Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah.
Stay sworn.